Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video for Honeybee Stamps. Today we are going to be using Storybook Fall stamps and dies and then the Slimline Horizon dies. And that's it. We're going to be making two different scene cards with the same stamp set. And the thing that's really nice, I know that Slimline cards are like not trendy anymore. Not that I care about trends, because if I want to make a slimline card, if that like suits my scene better, I'm still gonna do it. I'm gonna do me. But what's nice about these is because the border of them, like the length of them is 8.5. It means that we can cut them once out of a half sheet of paper and split them right down the middle to get two scenes. And then I just trim off the bottom edge so that I have a straight edge to work with. And then we can, go on with our ink blending and stuff to add color to them. But then I only had to do the die cutting once. So that's super helpful. For the little cloud border, I do like to add a little shading to my clouds. And typically when I'm doing snow, I use shaded lilac. So I went with that for my clouds this time around. And then for what's next? I think the fence. So my intention was to use it on both cards, but then the other one got a little too busy. So I just ended up using it on one. And then for this one, I'm leaving it as a white picket fence. And so I'm just adding a little bit of shading at the bottom with hickory smoke. You could do this with a warmer, like a pumice stone or old paper too. That would be a little bit warmer. The old paper is kind of green. But anywho, for the grass and the hills, I'm actually going to do two different combinations of green. So the first one that I'm going to do is like a really bright green. And this is kind of my go-to. If I'm making a scene and I need green grass, this is what I gravitate toward. It's Twisted Citron, Mowed Lawn, and Rustic Wilderness. And then I do the lightest color all over. And then the mid-tone I'm going to do about halfway up. And then the darkest portion will really just be, kind of on the sides and on the edges. The reason that I chose to do two different ones is everybody has different preferences, but you can make these work in your scene just by switching up the color, so that one hill looks maybe a little bit further off in the background, or for you to add more interest without having to necessarily do a whole nother technique, like we're still using ink blending. So I go all the way out to my darkest color, which in this case is Rustic Wilderness. And then once I get out to the darkest color, then I work my way back to the lightest color. So this is me going back through, adding the Mowed Lawn, and then I'll add the Twisted Citron. I'm going to show you the whole process, but part of it is going to be sped up, because for the next like 2-3 minutes, all we're going to be doing is ink blending. Now, again, everybody is different with what they like. I typically, as a crafter, have invested in my inks and making my own backgrounds instead of investing in pattern paper. But if you're a person who's invested in either pattern paper or colored cardstock, you could use that as well, and then just add a little bit of shading with your ink blending instead of having to go from white to a fully colored image. So for this one, this is more of a jewel tone or a more muted combination. And it's still a yellow-green, but you're going to see when you put them next to each other, they're very different levels of saturation. So for this one, this is probably the first one. Like, I used to gravitate toward this before Tim came out with Twisted Citron and Mowed Lawn and Rustic Wilderness. This is crushed olive, peeled paint, and forest moss, which is still a yellow-green, and I'm still doing everything in the same way. It's just not nearly as bright as the other green. We are going to use them both, though. So, and then here is that, all the way out to the forest moss. I do find myself using this color combination more in fall and in winter. If I'm making that style of scene card, this is obviously a fall-ish card, cards, plural, Kelly. So yeah, we're doing the ink blending, and then I think the only thing we have left to do after this is the sky. And for that, I just used an A2 size panel, and here's the two different ones. So that way you could see the two differences. If you only have one, well, I'll come back to that. For the blue, I'm using Salvage Patina and then Salty Ocean, and I'm bringing it down about, I don't know, 3/4 of the way. I don't need to do all the way down to the bottom because we're going to have so many levels of scene built up that you won't even be able to see it. So back to what I was going to say. If you only have one of the green combinations and you still want to create that depth, you could do your grass up front or your hill up front with maybe your lightest color and your mid-tone, and then do the hill in the back with like your mid-tone and your darkest color, and you will still be able to create dimension by putting that darker color out there in the back. It will push it to the background and still give you dimension without having to have a completely different color combination. So now those are done, everything is done, and I am kind of like looking and seeing, what it is that I am going to put together. And this one actually is it's the negative of the grass. That big one is the negative of the grass. I actually didn't end up using either one of the negatives, but I did color them just in case. So now I'm on to stamping, and I'm stamping everything, basically every image that is in the stamp set. Speaking of the stamp set, this is by my crafty BFF, Dawn Woolslagel. This is the Storybook Fall. And I cannot tell you how happy I am to be able to color her cute little images again. It's been a really long time since she has put out a set. She did obviously Honeybee. She's been, I think she's got 2 or 3 out now. But before that, it's been like years, and it's been a really long time since she's done like full-blown critters, and I love them. There's just something about her style that is cute, but in a sophisticated kind of way that I just adore. And so I was very excited to be able to sit down and work with her stamp set because I love scenes and I love her images. So it's like a match made in heaven here. So now we're going to be going in and doing the coloring. There is a lot of coloring because we're doing 2 different scenes. Now, I'm not bringing in any other stamp sets. All of these elements that you see here are from this one stamp set. But I am going to color them, and I do color them multiple times. Like I have 2 of the apple baskets. I think I colored 4 of the hay barrels, even though I only ended up using 3. I colored 6 of the birds. Like I did use them, more than just once, but the main characters, in one of them, it's the 2 puppy dogs, and in the other one, it's the scarecrow. There's only 1 in 1. But the background is the same and the other supporting elements are the same, which I think is important to show you guys that, how much you can get out of just the one single stamp set that you have. So let's talk about the coloring. I like in my scene cards to kind of repeat the same color combinations because it helps it to have some cohesiveness and to not be super busy. And that's just because I am more of a clean and simple card maker at heart. That doesn't mean that you can't, have every color of the rainbow. You absolutely can. But I feel like my scenes look more put together when I stick with repetitive colors. So this color combination for the tree is the E50 family, and it's 53, 55, 57, and 59. And that's what I did for the tree. And as you can see, I added the shadows like down in the nooks and crannies, and it's really giving the tree lots of dimension. And then any of the places or the high points, that's where I leave it lighter for my highlights. I'm going to use the same brown throughout, but I'm not necessarily going to use all of the colors every time. And that's just like we were talking about with the ink blending, how if maybe you don't have all of the options, that you could use, the lightest and the midtone and the darkest to kind of switch it up. Markers are the same way. And I imagine colored pencils would be too if I use colored pencils more often. They take me 100 years, so I don't. I'm definitely much more comfortable using alcohol markers. So for the barrel and the tree, I did use all of those, like those 4. And I think same thing for the post of my scarecrow. Yeah, I'm looking at it. I definitely did use all 4 there. But then for the tie, for the hay, the hat of my scarecrow, my puppy dog that I colored brown, for that one, I left out the darkest color, which gives them a little bit of a softer look so that they don't look identical, but they still complement each other. Let's talk about these yellows here for a second. Now, you guys know, if you've been watching my videos, you know I love me some bright colors. And this is my usual combination for something that is yellow. However, in this case, I didn't love it. And it just seemed kind of harsh. So here what I'm doing is there's little lines drawn in, that are obviously meant to give it some texture. And so I'm just kind of going over those little lines with my colors, as well as adding some shadows where that tie would be pressed into my hay. The only reason that this color combination works is because that lighter midtone, it's a Y08 in this case. You do have to go over everything. You have to go over the Y24 or the YR24 and the E99, but then it helps to make it softer. However, this yellow was a little bit like jarring. It was a little garish for this kind of hay that I was looking for. So I ended up, and you'll see, I didn't leave it out because I try to be transparent with you guys, and I want you to know how we got from one to the other. I ended up coloring the other ones with still the E99 and the YR24, but for my lighter colors, I used a Y15 and a Y11, and that really did kind of knock it back, so that it wasn't so like in your face, so that it wasn't so bright. And then I went back to the other hay bales and went over that yellow. They were still a bit brighter than the other ones, but not so much that it was like, knock you back, that big bright yellow. And also the scarecrow. I did go back over the scarecrow. So while we're coloring, let's have a little chit chat, shall we? I asked you guys the other day on my channel what your opinion was about whether or not we should bring back story time. And it was a resounding yes. I'm so glad that we're on the same page with that we can, try to go back to having a more of a regular story time. Here's that yellow I was telling you about. You can see the one on the right has the Y15 and the Y11, and it's just a bit softer. It's just a bit nicer than the one that's kind of like, gotcha. As my daughter would say, it boos you. Like, how when you jump out and jump scare somebody, like, boo. That's what she always says when she, pops out from under the blanket or whatever. I booed you, which is adorable. She does like to lie in wait so that you'd be coming in the door and she would get you. Normally, like if you're already in the house with her, she can't be quiet enough to actually scare anybody. But if you are just coming in the door and you haven't seen where she's gone, she can get you sometimes. For the little bandana, you may notice that we colored it yellow, but on the final card, it is a red. True facts, I changed my mind because that particular doggy was standing on the hay barrels and it was yellow on yellow on yellow, and he needed something to break up that color. So I ended up changing it to red. I didn't color a whole new puppy, by the way. I just took the red marker and went right over the bandana and moved on with my life. For the apples, you can see, I know that they're tiny. I know that. But I really do think it helps to get at least 3 colors in there. I did do 4, but even if you could just get a light, a medium, and a dark. Same thing with the birds. I think that it makes a really big difference in the dimension that you can get. You can be really light-handed with your dark color. You just need to get a little bit of contrast in there. Same thing with the apples. Just pick the left or the right-hand side and add just, even if all you can bring yourself to do is a little dot, do it, because it will make a difference. So what were we? Oh yeah, you guys were so kind in your commentary, and said that you would like to bring story time back, and you really missed that element. So I'm super glad we're on the same page with that, and so we will be bringing back a more what's the word I want? A more consistent, that's the word I want. I probably couldn't think of it because I never am. I'm not consistent with anything. A more consistent story time to the channel. So, yeah, I really do appreciate your guys' feedback when you leave me comments. I know that I don't always get to all of the comments. I try to stay on top of it. But I always think to myself, like, oh, I want to say thank you, or I want to say this. And like, so I read it and I'll come back to it. But as my husband says with my text messages, like where I read them and then like mentally I reply, but I don't actually reply. That's kind of how it ends up happening. So I do try to make sure that I read them. I do read all of them. I think in the future going forward, I may just be like, okay, I'm going to heart it. And then, if there isn't a opportunity, like if I'm not in a place where I can like type out all of the things I want to type out, I still feel like a heart and acknowledging it is better than nothing. Please let me know what you think there. If you would rather me wait until I can actually sit down and respond, I don't know how. That's not a guarantee. Like I can't give you a guarantee, but I do try my best. For the leaves on the tree, because we have 2 different greens going on in the background, I also wanted to repeat those greens with the coloring. So I have some brighter colored leaves to match the brighter colored green. So more of the YG 03, 17, and 67 is that combination. And then for the other one, to repeat those greens, that's the YG 90s family. And that one for sure, at this time of year is when it starts to come out. And you will see it through the winter. This is like I told you before, like that green is like my go-to fall and winter green. I don't know why I am the way I am, but I am. That's just how God made me. So that one's here to stay, at least until probably like the March-ish of next year. So those little leaves were done repeating those same colors. And then for the birds, I obviously wanted to have some bluebirds. I thought that would be a nice contrast with the red apple tree. And then also my scarecrow and that little adorable puppy dog both have on little denim overalls, which are so cute. And I wanted to be able to color those blue. And this is the 90s family as well. Do you remember when overalls were like, I'm probably dating myself. They were really popular when I was I a junior, sophomore or junior in high school? Overalls were really, really popular. And I had a blue pair, like a blue corduroy pair. Loved them. Super comfortable. super comfortable. But anywho, like I know when my grandmother was younger, like they had, overalls and stuff, but it was because they actually worked a farm, not because, they were 16 years old trying to look cute in lunch like I was. Like she actually worked on a farm. Her family was from the South. And they had amongst other things, they also picked cotton. That was the farm that she had. She always used to jokingly say that when she graduated high school, that it was either get married or go home and work the farm, and she didn't want to pick cotton anymore. So she married my grandfather. But there must have been something more there, because they were married for 63 years. So, anywho, she actually did farm, which is the only reason I know how to do things like, snap my own peas or my own green beans, and how to clean them and all of that stuff. That's from my gram, because my mom certainly is not. I mean, she knows how to do it because that was her mom, but, we weren't growing our own green beans or anything. Grandma always had a garden. And Dawn, like, speaking of Dawn, who drew this, like, she has a huge garden just with tons of variety. And she sometimes talks about that on her lives. All the different things that she's growing in her garden, which obviously, because we are friends and we talk, I do get to hear about, but I'm growing nothing. I have a black thumb. I have like 2 houseplants I've been able to keep alive for the last couple of years. And to me, that is winning. That's all I'm capable of. For the hat, this is another example of where I left off the darkest color, and I just used the lighter ones so that we could get more of a tan versus a deeper brown. For the, what do you call that? The little belt, the metal fastener on the bucket, I just used some lighter C's, the cool gray families, and I'm going to use these same ones to color this little puppy dog down here. I'm not going to be super heavy-handed with the grays. I want him to look like a light gray or a white. I am going to color that little patch over his eye with the darker gray marker. So that is filled in, because that's so cute. But obviously, any sort of natural color that you would like to color doggies. I just wanted something that was going to be more of a neutral element, since I already had a brown tree. I have another dog I need to color brown. I didn't want to bring in the warm grays, because that would have been another like brownish color that would have been competing. So I just decided to go with the cool grays, because that's already what I had used on my fence and that little band. For my sitting puppy dog, he is, again, left to be a little bit lighter. Now, I will tell you that I did end up coloring him twice. Not completely, but you can see, like, I'm starting with my darkest color. I'm putting those shadows down behind his nose so that his little snout is more prominent. On his front paws that are behind his feet, I'm adding more shadows there. But once I went out and added my lightest colors, I lost a little bit of that. So I'm going back in and adding the mid-tone and then the lighter color and blending them out again, just to make sure that I have shading I'm happy with. And then they both got a little pink cheek, just like my Scarecrow did. And then I just blend those out with their lightest colors. For the fence, I did the little well, they're not posts. What are they? The connector pieces in between. I did add just a little bit of shading kind of to the left and right with my C5, and then again with the C3. I also used the C3 to add a little bit of shading kind of down from the bottom and a little bit up. Not a ton, just a little bit. And then blended both of those out with the C1 to help give it a little bit more dimension. For the grass, this is the grass that's going to be right up front. And so everybody, like, that's the most detailed it's going to be. And so since it's the most detailed it's going to be, this is where I'm going to spend all of my time adding in those little blades of grass. So I'm starting with my darkest color. I'm not being terribly heavy-handed, especially not toward the top. I am adding a couple little dark spots, or maybe there would be a little bit more shadow. But then once I have the darkest down, I'm going to go in with the mid-tone. I do go right over top of other grasses. Same thing with the lightest color. Because alcohol markers are transparent, they can lift darker colors, which just gives you more variation. So that's all of the coloring done. Now we can use the coordinating dies to go ahead and cut these little cuties out. And then from here, I did play around a little bit trying to figure out what sentiment that I wanted to use. There's some really cute kind of punny ones in there. And they are like, they're just really cute. Anyway, I chose Hey Friend, and if friends were apples, I'd pick you, because I thought that that was pretty fitting. And then I did stamp them in black on white, but then I also stamped them like you see here. I treated with my anti-static tool, stamped down in our Brilliant White pigment ink, and then added a white detail embossing powder. And I ended up going with these because I felt like it just tied in that black stamping all together. They also have coordinating dies, so I used those. And now I'm just going to start playing around with laying everything out. That is another benefit of those like slim lines, because I have a couple of different hills and clouds and grasses that I can play around with. It allows me to see what kind of different scenes I can make. So you'll see me, look at a couple of different options before I finally commit to what I'm going to do. And then once I am committed, then we'll start gluing things. So one of them, I showed you how I put the whole thing together. Just on one of them, because they're basically the same thing. So that way, we're all ready. This is a long one. You guys were like, bring back story time. And I was like, here's this super long video of me just talking about random stuff. You're welcome. So anywho, I was really happy with the way that these came out, because I just think it's so cute. And like, obviously they're not the same card, but they are very complementary to each other. So I feel like, you could maybe even make a set out of them, or, here's just maybe 2 ideas for a stamp set that you purchased. Even if you don't like the full scenes, you could use some of these elements. So the one with the scarecrow is the one that we're going to go ahead and glue down. When I moved everything off, I left the clouds. The clouds are kind of like my horizon barometer. So I marked it with a pencil so that I could put those back exactly where they needed to go. And then that way, I'm going to put my darker hill in the background and then the brighter hill in front of that. And then my bright grasses will be the front piece in both of them. So there's that darker hill that's going down. And for some of them, you might not see all of the ink blending that we did, but because I never know how much of it you're going to see, like in this case, you don't see much of it, but look at the one on the right in that top right-hand corner, you can see all of that dark shading that we added. So unless, you know 100% exactly how they're going to line up, I always feel like it's better to include the extra shading and then have it, like that you don't need it, then not include it and find out that you did need it. And now all of a sudden we don't have the dimension that we could have had. So here, I'm putting down what are those? Hay barrels, and the scarecrow and then the birds. I'm putting them down flat. And then because this is a personal thing, it's not that it doesn't look cute. Like if you look at the right-hand one, like that scene is still very cute. However, I like when my scenes are kind of seamless. And because of that, I will go in and then color the edges of my dies, my die cuts, to make sure everything blends in. I just follow the line of the hill here. So right along that top edge, I'm just going to follow the edge to where it makes sense and fill those in. And I will do the same thing for each of the background colors, or like the bird sitting on the hay, the bottom where his feet is, I will color yellow. For the red bird, like the top where it's backed against the hill, I'll color that green, just so that they're, I can make sure that they're all blending in together. Then the fence, the apple, like the little apples I glued to the the basket, the bucket. It's a bucket. I glued to the bucket, and then I glued the fence and the bucket to just the grass. And that is so I can lift it up as one full piece and add foam tape underneath it. So that just that top portion will be lifted up. And then on the other one, it will be that apple barrel, that little puppy dog that's sitting down, and those grasses are also popped up. And again, if you're mailing this to somebody and you don't want to have to worry about, if that foam tape's going to get in the way, it would look fine with it just adhered flat. This is just another way that you can add some interest and some depth. So I did pop up those two front sections and then also the sentiments. So the little hey friend, which I think is so cute. I think it's super cute. Hey friend. I did pop up that sentiment and then the other one as well. If you don't have foam tape or you don't prefer the foam tape and you wanted to lift up the sentiment a little bit, you could just cut, a couple of other, cut that die cut a couple of times and then glue them together. I certainly do that pretty regularly. Here, the only reason we're busting in on this section of video is to just show you the tree hung over, so I trimmed it off, and then I took those branches and glued them on the left-hand side. This is going to help give us the illusion that the scene continues on, and there is another tree over there, and so our little cutie patooties are just out there, in the orchard, picking apples and collecting them. So just, something as simple as that, just adding those little elements can really help make a scene. The other thing that I did here is while I was blending in the white die cut, I did give them a little shadow underneath them, just so that they didn't look like they were floating out. That's something else. If you feel like your scene isn't super grounded, you can try putting a shadow underneath your items. So now everything is glued down. I'm going to go in and add some clear shimmer to the birds, to the apples, to their little cheeks. And then I'm also going to do some white highlights. I definitely did this in all of the hay, because, you would have those lighter pieces. I also did it on the little birds' wings and their tail feathers, just a couple of little strokes to add more interest. And then I also added the highlight on the apples and a little stitch on the denim for my scarecrow and my puppy dog. I also added some texture with a little bit of a tone-on-tone diagonal stripe with that same blue mid-tone, so that they would have a little bit more, just a little extra something, a little extra detail. For the shine, I added some glossy accents to the apple, and then that's it. That's both cards. So I hope that this inspires you to make a couple of scene cards, play around with what you have, and to check out Dawn's new set because it's amazing. So thank you guys so much for joining me. I always appreciate your time, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.